George just said it. Praying for a miracle because stranger things have happened. Welcome into the Voice of College Football, FSU. And of course, this is our Wednesday night show with George Georgitis from the Renegade Report, breaking down FSU football. And this is the last game of the year. Wow. Already the final game for FSU and trying to, can never save this season, but this would be sweet to pull off a stunner against the Gators. George, how you doing today?
Man, we're hanging in here. It's Thanksgiving week, getting prepared to really chow down on some food tomorrow. And you hit the nail on the head. We've been telling everybody to just pray for a victory. The Noles get this done. Florida State against Charleston Southern. You saw flashes of what an offense could look like if guys catch passes and make a few blocks here and there. Will it carry over? We're going to find out. But it would, truly, like we were talking about off air, it would be the most ironic and the best kind of spoiler position ever, with Florida State's recruiting class falling apart, UF's trending up, Napier all of a sudden slays Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. They're just through the roof with their momentum and just picking off our class. For us to be able to turn around and beat them at home in front of all these recruits that just flipped, and a guy like Solomon Thomas, who's visiting Florida State, but at the same time, you're playing the school that wants to flip him. So, of course, he's going to come to that game. So it's, Byron Lewis, he's supposedly all in. I get it. I can't blame a kid with, where Florida State's going for jumping off. He doesn't even know his running backs coach is going to be. But at the same time, for just the fun of the game and the rivalry and all that, it would be the funniest thing that could happen in college football for Florida State to just somehow take them down a peg with our freshman quarterback making his second career start.
Folks, we appreciate you stopping by. Leave those comments and questions there in the chat. No reason to dissect this one down to the wire, but we'll certainly look at this year's game. But we'll also talk about the rivalry and talk about what we can expect in the offseason. So not to bring this to a grinding halt, but you took us by way of the recruiting class here for 2025, and National Signing Day is coming up next Wednesday. So, folks, if this blindsided you like it did me about 2 or 3 weeks ago when somebody mentioned National Signing Day date, and I said, no, it's not December 4th. It's always later in the month, like halfway through the month on a Wednesday. No, December 4th is National Signing Day. So 1 week from today is National Signing Day, and I see that Florida State somewhere around number 30, number 35 in the nation, according to most services, and falling. So how do they somehow maintain something? I got to think anybody coming to Florida State at this point, they just love Florida State. They've always been a Florida State fan, always wanted to play here, or they made some kind of great connection with Mike Norvell. Otherwise, what's he selling? And also, of course, then you got to start looking at being a big time program, but starting to grab guys that would otherwise go to Memphis or Tulane or somewhere like that, selling them that, okay, we are Florida State. But what are your thoughts about this recruiting and how to somewhat recoup it?
You covered a lot of ground there, but I'll start with the very tail end of it. I think, and we've talked about this on previous shows, Deion Sanders made comment, I don't think it's so crucial that you fill out the class with the guy who maybe would have ended up at Tulane and Florida State's only power offer, et cetera. The importance of that, I think we saw what happens when you do that and then they end up getting on the field this year out of high school. This is an 80% high school class. I think they need to do what they possibly can to get the difference makers, whether they can only get 4 or 5 of them to add to the class. We were number 25. It recently dropped, like you said, to 31 or 35, depending on 3 or 247. When we lost the most recent decommitment of Byron Lewis from American Heritage, one of my favorite running backs in the class. He'd been with us a long time, but again, you can't blame a guy for leaving. They are doing a good job at that to a certain degree. I mentioned Solomon Thomas is going to be at the game. Tavian Wallace was here for Charleston Southern, the high 4-star linebacker that was previously projected to Florida State, ended up committing to Arkansas. Well, not a big difference between FSU and Arkansas season. Like, obviously worse, but it's not that much greater over there. So if you're looking at, okay, two teams that had losing seasons, Florida State or Arkansas, Florida State, that logo looms a little bit there. So can they get a couple of these guys to get the class to still, salvage it to be top 25, top 20? We'll see. If I'd have to guess, it'd be somewhere right there around 25 or 30 when the dust settles. I imagine one or two will leave. Maybe they can get a Wallace, they can get a Lofton and a Solomon Thomas to stay. We're still going to have to see how that works. But a lot of it has to do with the staff. I don't know. It's a big question you brought up. Like, what are they selling? Obviously, they're selling the fact that they've already got rid of two coordinators. They're making changes. They're going to, bring in a ton of people. There's going to be a ton of money to spend for NIL, et cetera, et cetera. Are they already saying that it's going to be the go-go offense? I'm not sure. But, we're getting really close to knowing that. This time next week, we should have some kind of answer on at least one of these coordinator hires. There may be a couple more firings. Who knows? So it's going to get real quick. But, this December 4th, it's really unprecedented. They moved it up, 20 days, 20-something days. I couldn't imagine being a playoff team and trying to, do all this, sort it all out and have your class together. I mean, obviously it's good to be in the playoffs and those are some of the best recruiting teams, but you got to give a little something there to be recruiting at the highest level and concentrated on signing day versus, your conference championship or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, you might be, if you're pick a number of teams, might be playing the most important game of the season. Take Texas A&M. They're obviously hanging on by a thread, but they do have a path to the playoff by way of the SEC championship game. Well, they're playing their biggest game in like 12 or 14 years, Saturday against Texas. They finally renew that rivalry. Plus, it's for their entire season to get to the SEC championship game. Then they got National Signing Day right in the middle of the week, preparing for the SEC championship game, and then possibly a playoff beyond that. Yeah, it's I know that a lot of coaches were out there, of course, complaining. And when I say complaining, I think that they have every right to do so when there was this initial early signing day that was announced and implemented, 6-7 years ago, something in that range.
Yeah, the fact that they made it even sooner, like, coaches were all complaining to fix the calendar. Their solution to me was like nuts. Like, I thought they were going to make it a little bit later and then do away with February or something like that. But just to move it all the way up, it basically rendered. I mean, but we're going to see the effect. Maybe they were hoping more guys are going to wait until the actual signing day in February. Maybe that has an effect. I guess we won't know that till we get the data. But yeah, I agree. It's almost punishing you for being a competing team. Like, if you're Alabama or Ohio State, it's not going to affect you much. But if you're Missouri and you're in the running, or Tennessee and you're in the running for a playoff spot, then that's going to be kind of tough for you to, try to pull off your recruiting class and be worried about Texas and how that's going to affect you getting in the playoffs. So I could definitely see that. Unfortunately, FSU isn't a part of all this mayhem we have this year with the polls and the SEC scrambling to figure out how to get 3 and 4 lost teams in and all that stuff. But it's fun to watch, but we can't talk too much with what we got going on. So yeah, try to stay on Florida, and we could make something happen. It'd be great. But yeah, that's where we're at.
And then if you're hearing from the same people I am to a certain extent, that there is going to be more activity in this transfer portal than there ever has, that I guess because of more money being available, that there's going to be more player movement, even more than what we've seen the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it's when you look around at the teams that are winning, SMU, Miami, within the ACC, different teams in the SEC, Big 12, it's like 30, 40, like ASU, that's a portal built team. It's year 2 and they grabbed a ton of players out of the portal. You signed a blue chip quarterback, Jaden Rashada, that was like the backbone of that first class. He's not even there anymore, but they're rolling on like thunder. There's a lot of guys that we'll see. CJ Campbell was a guy who was a preferred walk-on at FSU, worked his way up to being a quasi scholarship player. We never found out what the deal is, if they didn't offer him one, whatever. He goes to FAU, runs for 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. He's back in the portal. There's a lot of that. So uh, it's so hard to kind of judge this thing, because we thought this was going to be the best portal class ever this past year, and it was kind of a flat one for us, and even kind of around the country. It wasn't the biggest one ever. But yeah, I guess we're going to find out. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm just being told again that by some pretty reliable sources. Now it's somewhat speculation, but that even to the point that these agents for these players are going out earlier in the season and really testing the waters and figuring things out and approaching teams and coaches about their interest even earlier in the season.
But
This not just
now that I think about it, I guess Tennessee suing them after Florida State accepted sanctions, and then
Mhm.
pretty much ceasing enforcing anything. And we know there's a hard cap coming. And what's the middle of 2025? 7 months from now, there's a hard cap coming. When you look at it under that lens, this could be like the final days of the wild, wild west, where they just
Yeah.
go crazy with it across the country. We've talked about it, about Florida State. Oh, you're talking about boosters were already poning up, you know, 20, 30, $40 million in case it was time to get rid of Mike Norvell. Okay, well, keep half of that and throw it towards NIL on top of what the Battle's End brings in, or whatever the case may be. I think more now than ever, there's a proven, you've got 4 or 5 good years of data that, okay, you get senior quarterback, you get guys who, have got a ton of snaps, whether it's D3 or D2, it translates more than anything. It's like, yeah, FCS is a lesser level than FBS, but if you run for 1,500 yards at the FCS level, regardless of whether you're an All-American at Florida State or Oregon or wherever you go, you're going to be a piece they can count on, and a lot better than 99.999% of true freshmen. Colorado, ASU, SMU, like I said, you look around the country, there's a lot of teams. You can't, obviously, FSU proved it's hard to build a consistent program year in, year out without that top high school recruiting, but you can buy a season through the portal if you hit on the right guys.
Folks, I'm not trying to sell in any particular way that there's any connection between Florida State and Ole Miss, other than that they played a season opener a few years ago. It was a really good game, and Florida State came back and won. But we did launch an Ole Miss channel. We got a Wednesday show each and every week, and it's a really good show. And we got an Ole Miss channel, so please subscribe to the Ole Miss channel. Even if you could care less about Ole Miss, if you enjoy and believe in what we're doing here at the Voice of College Football, please subscribe. And then you can unsubscribe when we get to 1,000 subs. How about that? So
Hey,
please sub to the
Ole
Ole
Miss
Miss
losing to
channel.
Florida might have been the best thing that could possibly happen for them. That might have got them 2 more years with Lane Kiffin. I'm just saying,
Mhm. Yeah, that could be. That could be. I don't know what was going through those Gator fans' minds, because they were showing up at that game expecting to be chanting at the end of the game, about Lane Kiffin getting Lane Kiffin there, but then they pull off the upset, and so yeah, the Gators had a better than expected season, unless it goes south for them on this Saturday night, which is not expected. Do you think, George, that there's any impact in hiring offensive and defensive coordinators as soon as the season's over? Meaning, boom, we're going to see all these results come in on Saturday. Then we know what Sunday looks like. Head coaches, but also coordinators, that they get coordinators before National Signing Day.
Absolutely. I don't know if the defensive coordinator gets hired. I think offensive coordinator specifically is extremely important. We're hoping to hear rumors on Saturday and Sunday, maybe a tweet about, I love my time in Las Vegas or whatever the case may be, and then Monday find out who our offensive coordinator is. That would be ideal. When you listen to Michael Alford and Mike Norvell talk about these things, oh, well, FSU has a ton of interest, NFL guys, college football playoff guys, all this stuff. It's the same thing. It's such coach speak. Of course, there's going to be somebody in each of those categories that's going to reach out. Like, that's just nature of the beast and how Jimmy Sexton works and the different, agents that are involved. So yeah, that's fine. But if you give credence to it, if you really think, okay, we're going after the Chris Hampton guy from Oregon, well, maybe that could delay it. He's possibly going to be in the playoff. If you think it's an NFL guy, well, yeah, their season goes a couple weeks past ours, so that could possibly hurt things. I'm hoping whoever it is, for at least one of the coordinators, we're going to find out and on Monday. And I don't. That's like what, December 1st or 2nd already on that Monday. So that only gives you a couple days. But if it's a defensive coordinator, maybe he can close the deal on Tavion Wallace. Or if it's an offensive guy, maybe he has an offensive line coach who's maybe on a playoff team that they'll be able to tell the guy, look, he's coming here. Not here yet, but this is my, I'm the coordinator and I got full reign, et cetera, et cetera. These kids have to have some kind of plan. I mean, you show up as a one-cut runner and then they've got some kind of West Coast offense and it doesn't work for you. That's a big problem. I'm not saying that Mike Norvell couldn't tell them, what kind of scheme it'll be. Just, put yourself in the mind of a 17-year-old kid. I wouldn't commit if I didn't know who it is. So going back to what you said earlier, what are they selling? A lot of folks think that there's a lot of confidence, especially on the offensive side, and possibly they're already telling them that, this coordinator and this guy's going to be down here. So we'll find out. I can't be more clear. I think it's crucial as fast as possible. That's why we were harping on needing to make a change. Whether you fire one coordinator, one coach, this or that, like something needed to change the signaling to the audience. You have to signal that you're going for it. You're willing to do whatever it takes. So, yeah. Hopefully by Monday at the latest, Mark. I think it would be at least you get one or two coaches in there.
So you're going to be sitting on ready at the Renegade Report.
Yeah, next week it should be fun. If not, it's going to be upset. But we're going to have signing day either way. I guess it's going to be like Wednesday, so it's going to be something.
When did you start watching Florida State football? Do you remember your first rivalry game against Florida?
Man, I started watching like in the mid-90s, but like the memories aren't there of actually watching the games. Those are all like watching them back on YouTube when I was a little older. Probably one of those 2003, 2004 games, but it's hard as a kid. Probably my first one that like I have a visceral reaction to was like 2009 when it was the Miami game and excuse my language. I think Ponder threw a touchdown, or we all thought it was a touchdown. And I'm jumping up at my buddy's house. Oh yeah, we won. We've been bad for years and years. We coming out. It's 2009. We're about to do this. No touchdown. 2009 was the last year of the kind of lost decade. So.
I don't remember that play. What happened?
That was it. They won. It was like I forget what the score was exactly, but we were down a few points, and it was a clock winding down to 0 play. Ponder hits, I forget who, Fortson or somebody in the back of the end zone, and you think it's a touchdown. Like they show it, touchdown, they cut away, everybody's celebrating, and they're like, incomplete. Game over. Miami wins. So, yeah, that was a tough one. 2009, that was the year that that got Bobby his job, and then they eventually beats West Virginia in the Gator Bowl, and they towed him off the field, and the rest is history. So that's like the whole T-ball years are kind of blocked out. You don't appreciate any of those. So, yeah, outside of being like 9 or 8 years old, watching Peter Warwick on TV on the national championship, not really knowing what's going on at that age. Probably that loss right there, right before the big run, and then of course Marcus Lattimore, Greg Reed in that Chick-fil-A Bowl. It's not really a rivalry, but that was two pivotal moments when I guess this fandom really took off to another gear.
Yeah. So when you think about Miami and you think about Florida, how do you compare those two rivalries?
Yeah, this is a good question. People talk about a lot, like online and dealing with fans of that, things like that. Like Miami there's like less respect, and it's just we're just gonna talk crap because we know Miami won in the 80s, 5 rings, all that stuff. The Florida thing is more visceral because these are your neighbors and the people you work with all week. These folks. As far as that's how it is for me. So, yeah, it's been a little bit more competitive. Like Miami for the past 20 years hasn't really done too much till this year. Florida, they've been really bad, but they've had good years in between. So it was a lot of fun beating up on the SEC East champion when they're talking about how much better the conference is.
Oh, yeah.
And we didn't win the ACC, but we smoked you, whatever the deal. But yeah, I think I always say I hate Miami more. I'd rather lose to Florida than Miami, but yeah, I know a lot of people, especially people on our show, are the other way around. So it's just one of those. It just it's different for every single person. There's different reasons for each.
Yeah, there was a run of years there you're alluding to, Jim McElwain, Will Muschamp, those teams where, like one game in particular, I think it was 30-2 that you guys whipped up on Florida, and we're sending them to the SEC championship game, and they couldn't even score a point on offense.
Those are some funny years, and they'd win 4 games one year, and then they'd win 10 or 12 games and be the SEC's champion, and they'd be bad for a couple of years. Give it to them, At least they had some spikes in there.
So what pushed you to Florida State and not Florida as a fan?
I don't know if it was pure peer pressure from friends and it was just that they were cool at the time, but Snoop Menace was my first, I was all about some Snoop Menace. And so that's kind of why I don't have those core memories. Like he didn't get to play, I forget whether it was 98 or 2000, he didn't get to play in the national championship game. So like that was my, reason why we lost. So yeah, big Snoop Menace fan. Snoop Menace, Chris Winkie, that team, that's when I jumped on board. The starter, this isn't starter tracksuit days. You know what I'm saying? The Florida State one. That's what I will. Actually, one of my best friends, Jace, at the time, like I give him shit to this day because he dropped him. He switched to an Alabama fan during the down years. Okay. Now when we have arguments about the team, he's like, hates FSU, hates Bobby Bowden. I'm like, dude, you're the one who put me on. That's how college football goes, though, man.
Absolutely. I'm going after the current 2025 class because I was curious to get your thoughts on some of these guys and what you've heard about possible movement. It's the strangest thing when I Google 2025 FSU commits like I typically do. That's what I usually do when I find these teams. I can't find them, but here we go. We just had to go another route. So we're looking at a class where we've got the number one hard commit, as you've talked about already, Solomon Thomas, Kevin Wynn, Gregory Xavier Thomas, and Mario Nash off the top. Are there any rumblings? I know you mentioned Solomon Thomas, and I know
we can take them one at a time. Solomon Thomas, we've already talked about him. I don't know. Right now, I'm kind of like 30% chance he stays at FSU. We'll see how this week goes. Kevin Wynn, he gone. Gregory Xavier Thomas, I'd like to think he stays. Mario Nash, pretty confident he'll stay. Peyton Joseph, I don't know if he already got a Fong bomb to somewhere or another else, but I put him at 50%. I thought he was all in. He started wavering a little bit. Chase Lofton's going to be a battle right down to the wire. It's kind of 50-50 whether you're going to get him to stay. A little bit of momentum. The Desir twins, I think they're 100% locked in. I think they're maybe getting overlooked, previously. And then when you have the decommits and kind of think writing on the wall, they got the go ahead to come in as twins, as brothers. So, yeah, those are some of those guys I think maybe we were talking about before the show that aren't as big, but these are two guys that are all about football, all about FSU, and they're locked in. So, yeah, good part of the class. Barry just committed. Ethan Pritchard, he's been one of the most locked in, quiet guys. If he tweets or says something, it's, something positive about FSU. Max Redmond, there's been whispers. I don't think it would kill you if he left or anything. It's just one of those things that, yeah, sure, maybe he's a good little player, but not really somebody that's going to come in and make this huge impact first year. And hopefully he proves me wrong. We'll see. Bruno Rouse, that's the kicker we just got. So I'm sure he's locked in. So it's not a
And
very long list. There's not
Yep.
much there, but
And you mentioning those last couple players again. We both know guys are diamonds in the rough. They jump up, they surprise. It happens every year, almost every class. There are guys near the end of the list that turn out to be contributors, at least, if not impact players or stars, and then vice versa. But generally, of course, the stars typically fall into place. So, at what point would you have an issue with these guys leaving? Like in regards to who's the first or the last guy on the list that it's going to be
well, it's,
a
it's
tough blow to
inverted.
lose?
It's inverted, Mark. That's the problem. Like before all this fell apart, FSU had exactly what we're talking about needing. They had 14 guys that were close to top 300 level. I could be speaking out of my butt, but 14 out of 15 commits at one time, blue chips. You had 2 or 3 5 stars. Number one D in this, number one outside linebacker. They were doing great, but then it all fell apart. Now that list is very short at the top with Solomon Thomas and Kevin Wynn of those kind of top 150, top 300 players, and they're probably gone. The guys at the bottom are the guys that just committed. So not to say they're lesser than or can't be great, or to downgrade them, but the rankings are what the rankings are. You're replacing 4 and 5 stars with 3 stars. It's just you can't hard to put lipstick on a pig. But what you can do is hope, okay, maybe they can get Tavian Wallace. That would be an upgrade at linebacker over anything in the class. That's somebody you were really disappointed on missing. If you can hold on to Solomon Thomas, there's not a lot of teams in the country that have access to 5 stars and several 4 stars at all. So you can get in the 25 if you can grab a couple guys here and there. But top 15, top 10, that's far and away. That's not going to happen. You just hope to get maybe a couple guys who are legitimate game changers, and you're going to have to fill out your roster. But with the early signing day the way it is, with the coaching staff the way it is, bring on the transfers, baby. That's another thing that happens after Friday for the teams that aren't in ACC championships. Guys are going to be hitting the portal. Those are going to be the names. They're going to be more intriguing to me than high school at this point in the game.
Yep. Absolutely. Track records, they can come in and contribute immediately for sure. And we just talked about the rivalries. I'm going to merge the two topics because it's so strange talking about Florida State, because most of the time you get amped up for that game and you get amped up for, even if you're not having a championship season, maybe you're having a season which you're projected toward a decent bowl game, and maybe you're 8-3 and thinking, okay, let's cap this off and do it right and beat Florida and let's finish it, in the top 15 or something like that. But obviously this is just a strange year and not a good one. But we're talking the future with the transfer portal and this 2025 class, but we're also leading into a rivalry game on Saturday night. So I got to think that if this is one of Willie Taggart's years, or this is the final Jimbo year where obviously he's gone at this point, you're watching the game and you're disappointed about the season, but you're still looking at a lot of dudes on both sides of the ball and kind of scouting them against Florida and thinking, okay, I think he can bust out next year and be a player. You watch this game on Saturday night, you don't know who in the hell is going to be here next year. And, if they're committed to Florida State or Florida State's committed to them and really wants them back.
Well, there's a lot of that. There are some key guys that I'll name, but on the offensive line, yeah, very few. Jalen Early, maybe Richard Leonard, who's been hurt, comes back. But out of that, almost all the offensive line are gone. The part that you are excited to watch, there's about 5 of them on offense. Luke Krummenhoek, obviously your true freshman quarterback, who finally has taken over the starting quarterback position. You wish maybe it could happen a little sooner. Florida beats us to the punch on that. They got a little bit more momentum with their freshman quarterback, but they also have a little bit better offensive line to allow them to do that. Lagway's been great. Luke, obviously less experience even in high school. Like Lagway threw 800 million passes, 6,000-7,000 yards junior and senior year. A lot less with our guy Luke, but you see it. He really can. He can make all the throws. He makes NFL throws look like nothing. Rolls out a lot better than some of the other quarterbacks we've had in the past that are a little bit shorter than him. You see it. He's got 2 tight ends flanking the offensive line, and Amari Williams, number 40. Dude's reclassified along with Luke. They're both actually originally supposed to be in this class. They reclassified, so they're very young, a lot of potential. Mario Williams, he was I think he was a 4-star, borderline 5-star defensive line recruit in the class of 25 before he reclassified it and ended up being a tight end here. On the other side, you got Landon Thomas, who was the number 1 tight end in the nation until he flipped it back to Florida State from Georgia. Then he dropped to like number 7. But you really see extreme, like, those are the type of guys I'm talking about on the rest of the class you need to get for Florida State. Those are guys that could compete, make plays as a freshman, and you can see it. A couple years they're going to be preparing for the NFL draft. It's unmistakable. Not to the same level with the wide receivers, but Lane McCoy showed flashes. The running back / tailback wide receiver, Micah Hydanzi, you see the speed. He's like a different gear. If he can catch the ball like he did on that wheel route against Charleston Southern, he'll be good. You've got some pieces there that you can see you can build with, but as far as the gut and kind of the core of the team, no, like it is what it is. But you at least have a quarterback and some pieces to throw around. Like, they can start to build something. There's something there, but I guess that's why this would be such a huge win for FSU. This is certainly their Super Bowl, their college football playoff, whatever you want to call it, bowl game. That's what this is. There shouldn't be any quit. These guys should be ready to just lay it all out on the line. Like Brett McMurphy and Waterboy or whoever's talking to him. You can't afford to hold anything back now, Brett. That's where we're at. They got all the trick plays, whatever Mike's got in the bank, whatever they've been working with Luke on since day one. Roll with it and then hope for the best.
Falconer TRX, appreciate you being here. Thank you for the contribution. I'm sure we will see you next hour. Thank you for that. And George, I think I've gotten out of you what I needed tonight in regards to setting the stage for National Signing Day and the transfer portal period and these coaching replacements at the OC and the DC spots, and a little flavor from the rivalry. So appreciate you showing up, George. It's always appreciated, sir. And we want everyone to head on over to the Renegade Report. Do you know when you're going live next?
We should be live Friday for sure. And then after the post-game show, of course, here on Saturday, it's just counting down to when we get some of these answers. So Friday and then Monday and Tuesday as usual. But to be determined, guys. If something breaks Saturday night at midnight or Sunday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, we'll probably go live, or I'll go live by myself. Like, it's been a long time coming. You're starting to see the engagement come back. Florida State fans are eager for answers and to see where this thing's going to go. So just counting the days. Almost don't want to do a show Friday. Don't hold me to it, guys. We'll see how y'all are feeling. Like, I want to get this game over. We're ready to move the conversation along. Ready to start telling lies again. Talk about how we're going to rebuild this thing instead of taking account of the rubble.
Post game here after the ball game with George, Florida State Saturday night, and then just have your eyes open, your ears open, your notifications on over at the Renegade Report as things start to unfold over the weekend and early next week with George. George, appreciate you.
I can't announce one thing. We got JV and Elliott coming on December 3rd. So that'll be Tuesday after this weekend. So whether we have answers or anything, JV and Elliott will be on. He's got a book coming out. So we're going to get his opinion as somebody he started out as a preferred walk-on, worked his way up to be a starting DB at Florida State, and then had, I believe, 8 or 10 years playing in the NFL. So excited about that. We're hoping the timing works out to where we can really get some pub for his book if some changes happen, but we'll for sure have him on Tuesday.
Awesome. George, happy Thanksgiving. And we always appreciate you holding things down for us on Wednesday. We will catch everyone on the Miami show here at 7 p.m. Eastern time, folks. See you in a few.